Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. My dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. This is part 2 of my video lecture on immunity from jurisdiction. So in part 1, I was discussing about the Trentex Trading Corporation case. Okay. So this is the practice of UK as far as the nature of the act test is concerned. And this, the Central Bank of Nigeria argued that they can enjoy immunity from jurisdiction of British court, but the Court of Appeal held, although the Central Bank of Nigeria is a state organ, but the act, the nature of the act, if we look at the nature of the act, this is issuing of a letter of credit, is essentially a commercial act. It means that a letter of credit can be issued by any private bank, not necessarily to be the central bank, the government central bank. Any private bank can issue a letter of credit. It is a commercial transaction, not necessary to have governmental authority to issue a letter of credit. So that's why, by applying the nature of the act test, in the Trentex case, Court of Appeal of UK decided that the central bank cannot enjoy immunity because it is a commercial act, not purely governmental or sovereign act. Okay, the third approach. The third approach is known as the contextual approach. And many states, they have adopted this contextual approach by looking at the purpose of the transaction when nature alone consideration is inadequate. When the nature of the act test alone is not adequate, we should apply the purpose of the act test as well, together, looking at the entire context, and if nature alone is not adequate, can apply the purpose of the act test. So this is many states are now applying this test. I will give one example of the practice of the Canadian courts on the basis of this contextual approach. So the case is US versus Public Service Alliance of Canada. In this case, the US was claiming immunity in respect of a dispute with its Canadian workers employed as firefighters and tradespeople on a US military base in Canada. So they are working in United States military base in Canada. Okay, but the dispute is the employer-employee dispute. Employer-employee dispute. So in this case, the court held that the court could look to both nature of the transaction. What is the nature of the transaction? It is an employment contract only, between employer and employment contract. And also look at the context in which it operated. What is the context this transaction operated? That is, the context is on a foreign state's military base. It is not in ordinary local area. It is foreign state's military base. Within the military base, this foreign state has power. With the consent of the host country, the foreign military base, within the military base, this foreign country, US, has power. Okay, power. So that's why the context is on a foreign state's military base. That's why the contract is undoubtedly is a commercial in nature. The context, the entire context is a sovereign context. It's operated in a sovereign context. So that's why the court decided that USA had immunity, even though it is the nature of the act is a commercial contract. It operated on a US military base, a foreign sovereign state, military base of a foreign sovereign state. So therefore, the court decided that the United States of America had immunity in this case. So what is the conclusion now about this sovereign immunity or state immunity? You can see that because of the three different approaches, three different tests, you can see that the state practice is not uniform. So since state practice is not uniform and consistent, any of the above tests have been established as rule of customary international law. It means that there is no established rule of customary international law on what test we should apply in determining whether an act is commercial act or sovereign act. So therefore, if a state, if it's not a party to any of the international convention or state immunity, that state can safely follow its own national law, its own national policy to make a distinction between whether an act is a sovereign act or a commercial act. So if applying its own national policy, national law, we cannot say that it's a violation of international law because there is no well-established rule of customary international law on the fact of whether an act is a sovereign act or a commercial act. Okay, you can choose any of the tests you like and you can apply. It is okay. Okay, thank you. The next subtopic is the Malaysian practice. Just briefly on the Malaysian practice. So as you all know, like in UK, Malaysia previously applied the doctrine of absolute immunity theory. Because Malaysia is a common law country, follow the UK practice. So that's why a foreign state or foreign sovereign is absolutely immune from the jurisdiction of Malaysian courts. So the case is Village Holding Syrian Berhad case 1988. But in 1990, the Malaysian position has been changed because of this case. Commonwealth of Australia versus Mitford Malaysia Syrian Berhad is a very innovative case following the Lord Denning's ruling in the Trentex Corporation case, the British case. So fundamental change of the law taken place in Malaysia because of this landmark case, Commonwealth of Australia case. And in this case, after analyzing the current common law position, not the old common law position, current common law position, the Supreme Court of Malaysia held that we are therefore of the view that the restrictive doctrine should apply here in Malaysia. Now, in Malaysia, we should apply the restrictive theory of immunity, not the old absolute immunity theory. So this is the quotation from the judgment. Commonwealth of Australia case, we were of the view that the acts of the two Australian customs officers could be classified as trading or commercial. So, sorry, could not be classified as trading or commercial. And agreed that the exercise of the functions of the customs arm of the Australian government could not be classified as acta jurisdictionis, and it should be regarded as acta juri imperii. Acta juri imperii means a sovereign act. So that's why the court make a distinction, very clear distinction. The custom officers of the Australian government, their act is not commercial act, their act is purely sovereign act or governmental act, acta juri imperii. Okay, so this is the Malaysian practice. Okay, now we move on to more detail on this state immunity. Now, the general trend is already discussed, how to make a distinction between a sovereign and a commercial act. But now we will go into detail of who are entitled to the state immunity or sovereign immunity. Normally, we are talking about the state. The state is the abstract. So those who are functioning and exercising the power of the state is the head of state, head of government, ministers. They are the state official because state official. So that's why now we are going into more detail about head of state immunity. This is part of state immunity. Head of state, head of government, state official. What is the immunity of them? Okay, when we talk about head of state, head of government, also the same category. So whenever we refer to the term head of state, it is also talking about head of government as well. The president or prime minister or king or ruler, whoever is head of state or head of government. And sometimes some minister like Minister of Foreign Affairs may also be included. Okay. Now, head of state, head of government, they enjoy immunity under international law before the courts of foreign countries. Okay. But first of all, we have to make a distinction between whether the case is a criminal case or a civil case. A civil proceeding or a criminal proceeding, because the law will be different. Now, first, immunity from civil proceedings. What is the state officials, head of state or head of government, immunity from civil proceeding? So now we have to apply now the two theories now, whether absolute theory or restrictive theory. And you know very well that the current existing law, modern established law is the restrictive immunity theory, and we have to apply this restrictive immunity theory as far as immunity from civil proceedings are concerned. So that's why head of state, head of government, their immunity from civil proceeding is not absolute. So no longer absolute theory. Their immunity is restrictive. So that's why their immunity is restrictive. To what extent? They will not be immune from commercial acts. They will be immune from only purely sovereign act. So we have to make a distinction between whether the act is a sovereign act or a commercial act. If it is a sovereign act, then the head of state, head of government will be immune. But it is not a sovereign act, it is a commercial act, they will not be immune from jurisdiction. That's why civil proceeding is very simple and clear. We have to make a distinction between whether it is a sovereign act or it is a commercial act. Now we move on to the second part. Second part is immunity from criminal jurisdiction or criminal proceedings. So this one is a little bit tough. You have to read carefully and listen carefully to my lecture. Okay, you have to listen carefully because this immunity from criminal proceeding part is a bit tough. So first of all, the preliminary question to be raised is whether the proceeding is before an international court or a national court. So the law is different. So first of all, we have to see whether this criminal proceeding is before an international court or before a national court, because the law is different. Okay. Now first, let us look at the international court. So as far as international courts are concerned, no immunity from criminal jurisdiction. Head of state, head of government, rulers or kings, they have no immunity at all before international courts and tribunals. Before international courts and tribunal, official capacity is no bar to the jurisdiction of international courts and tribunal. That's why official position as the head of state or head of government is no bar to criminal proceeding before international courts and tribunal, and this is it. It can be found in Article 27(1) of the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court. This is the provision of the Rome Statute. This statute shall apply equally to all persons, without any distinction based on official capacity. So that's why we are talking about this international criminal law, international criminal court. So they are based on natural law theory, justice, fairness, equity. So there's no discrimination at all. So before a court of law, there should be no discrimination at all. Even though you are a king, you are a ruler, we cannot make a distinction. The same as private individuals. All are the same. All human beings are the same. So this is based on humanity, the concept of humanity, and based on non-discrimination as to race or position or whatever. So that's why this statute shall apply equally to all persons, without any distinction based on an official capacity. In particular, official capacity as the head of state or government shall in no case exempt a person from criminal responsibility under this statute. So for international crimes, before international courts and tribunals, international criminal courts and tribunals, nobody is exempted from jurisdiction of international courts and tribunals. Okay, so there's no official capacity can bar the jurisdiction of the court. So this is a very important point. You have to take note of that. Now we move on to the second category, second part, that is immunity from national courts. As far as immunity from national courts are concerned, we have to make three distinctions. Again, three distinctions we have to make to discuss on head of state immunity before national courts. What are the three distinctions? Number one, whether the person is a serving head of state or a former, a serving or a former, a sitting head of state or former. Secondly, whether that is done in a private capacity or in an official capacity. And the third distinction is whether it was an ordinary crime or an international crime. So you have to make these three distinctions first, and I will discuss this later in the next part. Okay, thank you very much.